In a previous existence, my closest friend and I both tied the knot into the Morgan family, a well-known medical dynasty. She wedded Ethan, the eldest son of the Morgan clan. I married Jake, the youngest son of the Morgans. My bestie, however, birthed 3 kids in a row for Ethan, and all 3 were medical whizzes. As for me, I only had a daughter with Jake, and she was such a goof who couldn't even handle basic counting. Jake, who was super worried about his reputation, felt deeply embarrassed. Years later, at a medical conference, I brought my daughter along, and when she stuttered and called out, "Daddy," everyone cracked up. Humiliated, Jake, in a fit of rage, killed my daughter and then beat me to death with a club. When I woke up, both Jake and I had been reincarnated. This time around, during the Family Marriage Alliance event, Jake was the first to grab my best friend's hand and say, "I like you. Want to marry me?" The Morgan family, being a medical powerhouse, hosted a banquet inviting top medical figures and elite families from City B. It was a public matchmaking gathering. My family had been in medicine for 3 generations, but our private clinic had hit some snags recently. I attended the banquet hoping to get some help from the Morgans. Thinking about the disastrous marriage alliance from my past life, I couldn't hide my bitterness. The 2 Morgan brothers stood up front, surrounded by guests, looking lively. The 2 sons were in front, surrounded by the crowd, looking full of energy. 2 high society ladies beside them couldn't help but whisper, "Jake, the youngest, has such a chill vibe. He's like a total sweetheart. Ethan, the eldest, is also pretty handsome. He's just a bit distant." Distant? You have no idea how cold Ethan can be. I heard he's insanely talented in medicine but won't treat anyone he doesn't like. Jake is different. He's super easygoing. Anyone who comes to him for help, he takes good care of. I think a nice guy like him is the perfect hubby. But I heard Jake was born out of wedlock. Who cares now? He's been accepted by the family, right? My bestie, Lily beside me, after hearing this, excitedly grabbed my hand. Her eyes locked on Jake and the crowd. When she accidentally made eye contact with him, she blushed and quickly looked away. I, however, let out a sarcastic smirk. In my past life, I was also fooled by Jake's looks. My grandfather, father, and brother all studied medicine, and I followed suit too. Thanks to my great talent, I even became a somewhat famous golden-handed doctor in City Bay. Because of my renowned skills and pretty face, Jake chose me as his marriage partner. It was also then that I found out my bestie Lily liked Jake, but she got drunk that night and accidentally hooked up with Ethan. A month later, she was pregnant and reluctantly married Ethan. After tying the knot, Jake and I had a blast together. He was indeed, as everyone said, a sweetheart who knew how to care for people. Back then, I was thrilled to have found a great husband, but little did I know it would become the root of my misery later on. Not long after Lily married Ethan, she had 3 healthy sons in a row. My father-in-law was over the moon, praising Lily as a fantastic daughter-in-law, even giving her 900 million yuan. As for me, I couldn't get pregnant no matter what. Gradually, Jake started changing. He became impatient with me, irritable, and super worried about others saying he had no kids. He claimed something was wrong with my body, made me drink endless doses of herbal medicine, and subjected me to countless acupuncture sessions. To get me ready for pregnancy, he forced me to quit my job at the clinic and stay home. But I was a doctor myself. If I couldn't get pregnant for so long, didn't I know how to check my own body? Clearly, he was the one with issues. For a whole decade, I tried countless folk remedies that wrecked my health, but still couldn't conceive. I couldn't take it anymore and wanted to divorce Jake so he could have kids with someone else. He, however, sneered, "How much effort have I put into you? You think you can just say you want a divorce?" When I chose him as my marriage partner, it was for your medical talent. Otherwise, why would I have fallen for you? Unexpectedly, you're useless. What's the point of having great talent if you can't have kids? You're a waste. I had a huge fight with him and passed out. When I woke up, he was sitting by my bedside with a smile, saying I was pregnant. He seemed back to normal, asking how I was doing. After 10 months, I gave birth to a daughter. But the good times didn't last. Lily's 3 kids officially started studying medicine and were hailed by teachers and family as medical geniuses. My father-in-law immediately announced his retirement, letting Ethan take over most of the Morgan family businesses. And my daughter couldn't even do simple arithmetic and was considered slow-witted. Jake broke down, cursing me as a waste for not having sons, and kicked me out of the Morgan family with nothing. I didn't feel wronged. Instead, I was relieved and lived alone with my daughter. But at a medical conference, when my daughter stammered and called him daddy, everyone laughed and teased him. Jake immediately felt ashamed, thinking he lost face. That day, he barged into my house and killed my daughter in anger. "It's this idiot who made me lose face. DDD." I pushed him with all my might, trying to take my daughter to the clinic for help. Who knew Jake had gone completely nuts, and with a twisted face, he attacked me from behind. Before I died, I tightly held my little girl in my arms. My blood ran cold, and I gradually lost consciousness. I never expected to be reincarnated and even go back to the day of the banquet. The overwhelming hatred made my fingertips tremble. I coldly looked at Jake, only to see him walking straight towards my best friend. I shivered all over and suddenly realized he had also been reincarnated. Asterisk, asterisk, chapter 2. Asterisk, asterisk. My two sons are usually so absorbed in medical research that they're almost 30 and still single. I can't even think about grandkids. Morgan feigned distress. Everyone naturally knew today was a family marriage alliance banquet, and that Morgan was looking for marriage candidates. Ethan, the eldest, was born to Morgan's ex-wife. With incredible talent, he was a renowned medical genius. Jake, the youngest, was born to Morgan's current wife. It was rumored he was an illegitimate child, but he had a stellar reputation and was seen as a nice guy. In my past life, Jake had already scoped out all the high society ladies attending the banquet. His medical skills couldn't match Ethan's. Spoiled since childhood, he didn't practice medicine diligently. Wanting a smart kid to make up for his medical shortcomings, he had long considered choosing me as his marriage partner. But this life, without even looking at me, he walked straight up to my best friend. Everyone was stunned when he took her hand and said, "I like you. Wanna marry me?" Guests whispered about who my best friend was. Although Amelia's family had some wealth, they weren't on the guest list. She liked Jake and begged me to bring her along. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Since marriage alliances were usually between equally ranked families, I thought she could at most just join for fun. Morgan frowned and asked Jake, "Are you sure?" Jake nodded with a smile. "Actually, I've liked Miss Amelia for a long time. I'm taking this chance today to confess and propose." As he spoke, he looked at my best friend affectionately. My best friend was thrilled and without hesitation quickly replied, "I'm willing to marry you." At that moment, Jake seemed to casually glance at me. The disdain, disgust, and loathing in his eyes almost overwhelmed me. I felt a chill all over, remembering the fear and hatred before I died in my past life. Just as I was about to rush forward to slap him and break all pretenses, a warm, big hand took my cold wrist. I looked up subconsciously and met a pair of deep, dark eyes. The man in front of me was wearing a sharp suit. With a cool and distant demeanor, the corners of his mouth slightly curved into a faint smile. "Shall we get married?" Everyone looked around in surprise, whispering if the two Morgan brothers were secretly in love. Everyone knew about the issues with my family's clinic. Whoever married me would have to fix my family's problems first. Before getting any benefits, they'd have to patch things up in my family. When I was chosen as the Morgan family's marriage partner, no one saw me as competition. Morgan frowned but didn't say anything in the end. After all, it was his sons getting married, not him. But Jake, standing aside, darkened his face. "Bro, better check your marriage partner's health before tying the knot. Don't end up with someone who can't have kids and regret wasting your time." A surge of anger rose in my chest, ready to explode when Ethan smoothly took my hand. His tone was calm. "Whom I marry doesn't need your concern. Little brother, you better worry about your own partner. Besides, I'm marrying this person because I like her, not because of her ability to have kids." Jake's face stiffened. It seemed he was being mocked for marrying just to find someone who could have children. Jake's mom smiled and tried to save her son's face, saying, "Ethan, your brother is also concerned about you. But since you both chose who you like and they're willing, just pick a date and finalize the wedding." Morgan remained silent, tacitly approving his son's choices. Everyone sighed and started leaving one by one. Jake was gently caring for my best friend, but before leaving, he snorted coldly at me. "Bro, this woman may be pretty, but there are plenty of good-looking women out there. Don't be impulsive and ruin the rest of your life." Soon you'll find she's all show and no substance. You'll regret it. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 3. Asterisk, asterisk. When I got home, my parents already knew the news. Their hearts, which had been tense for months due to the clinic issues, finally relaxed. They actively prepared for the wedding with the Morgan family while discussing how to exchange benefits. The day before Jake got married, my best friend came to see me. She was beaming with happiness but looked very uneasy when she saw me. Diana, I was so stunned when Jake confessed to me that day. I didn't speak up for you in time. I really like Jake. He said he'll give me the best. She paused and then softly advised, I heard his brother is really cold-hearted. Ethan choosing to marry you probably means he wants to take over your family's clinic. I think you should think it through. Looking at Amelia's self-righteous face pretending to care about me, I smirked inwardly. Before marriage, Amelia was indeed my good friend, but after marrying, she became the sister-in-law who laughed at my misfortunes. In my past life, she also said Jake didn't like me and advised me to marry someone I liked. When I was being tortured by Jake, she smiled and said, See, I told you so, but you didn't listen. But since you can't have kids, just let your brother find someone else to have children. Then you can raise them and won't have to suffer. Amelia, I hope that after everything I went through in my past life, you still think like this. Amelia was all in for a grand wedding of a wealthy and aristocratic family to show off. But to her surprise, Jake didn't plan a big wedding. It was pretty shabby. He just booked a few tables at a hotel for close relatives and friends, placed some vases of flowers, and hired an MC. That was it. Amelia was so angry she cried with a sense of injustice. Jake, however, gently comforted her, saying Morgan didn't like extravagance and that he'd throw a grand banquet as compensation after she had kids. I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that. Amelia's family wasn't even considered elite in City B. Jake choosing her as his marriage partner after being reborn wasn't precisely because he was eyeing that she birthed 3 medical geniuses in her previous life. However, he was so concerned about his reputation that, feeling he married a wife from a different social class, he naturally refused to hold a grand wedding. Was the Morgan family short on wedding funds? Only Amelia believed his nonsense. I had experienced his sweet words in my previous life. Back then, I naively thought he really married me and treated me well because he liked me. But I never expected that, after just 3 years without getting pregnant, he completely changed. On my wedding day, Ethan held a wedding at the Morgan family villa and invited numerous elite families from City B. Ethan was dressed in a white tuxedo, and his indifferent face showed a look of joy. He put his arm around my waist, lifted my veil amid everyone's cheers, and tilted his head to kiss my lips. Darling, happy wedding. I blushed, my heart racing. Didn't everyone say Ethan was distant and unapproachable? Why did the man in front of me seem different? I remembered in my previous life he hardly ever hung out with Amelia, and his face was always cold at family events. He spent all day researching medicine, either at the clinic or in his own private office. And Amelia, besides taunting me, always said Ethan was like a working robot. After the wedding, Ethan took me to live in an apartment outside. I was surprised and asked, "Don't we need to live with my in-laws in the old house?" In my previous life, Jake had always lived with his in-laws, saying he wanted to be filial and couldn't let the old folks feel lonely. Ethan tugged at his tie and said, "No. How can we have our own life if we live with them?" I blushed and didn't know how to respond. Ethan, however, picked me up and walked into the bedroom. When I woke up again, the maid told me he had gone on a business trip to treat a patient. I looked at the message he sent on my phone and felt a bit disappointed. It seemed he was really a workaholic. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 4. Asterisk, asterisk. Everyone in the circle said Amelia was Jake's true love, and they were a model couple. Jake was extremely concerned about Amelia's health and spent money like water on buying tonics for her. He even quarreled with his own mother to defend Amelia. He was almost obedient to her in every way and was called a model husband by the media. And the news about me somehow reached the clinic where I worked. Her husband went on a business trip the day after the wedding. She's really just a pawn in an arranged marriage. Maybe Ethan has someone he likes outside. Possibly. What's the point of a grand wedding on the surface? These aristocratic arranged marriages are actually just going their own ways. My colleagues at the clinic gossiped about me behind my back. I didn't know who I had offended, but the media even went out of their way to publicize that Ethan from the medical family was forced to marry a wife he didn't like, and that he had someone outside and didn't want to go home after marrying. And these rumors against me finally exploded completely at a family banquet. After not seeing her for a year, Lily didn't seem as good as others described. She had gained weight, her eyes were full of exhaustion, and there were a few acne marks on her face. When she saw me, shock and jealousy flashed in her eyes. Amelia, I didn't expect that with Big Bro not around. You're actually doing quite well. I curled my lips and said, he's on a business trip outside, eating and drinking well. Naturally, I'm doing well too. Lily pursed her lips and then put her arm around Ethan's arm, speaking with a somewhat proud tone. Jake is so good to me. He wouldn't bear to be on a business trip for so long. He even advised me not to work so hard and just stay home and enjoy myself. Seeing that I didn't seem to have much of a reaction, Lily added, Amelia, why don't you also quit? Working at the clinic is so tiring. Don't tell me Big Bro hasn't given you any money to spend. I laughed and said, do I need to rely on a man to support me? Haven't you always known my family is rich? Besides, how do you know my husband hasn't given me any money? Lily was at a loss for words. Before she could say anything else, Jake interrupted. It seems you like my absent Big Bro a lot, I said in an indifferent tone. I naturally like my husband. As soon as the words came out, Jake's face instantly darkened, and he snorted coldly. Lily was stunned, but stayed still, her eyes darting between me and Jake as she tried to pull Jake away. Who would have thought that Jake, who had always been obedient to his wife, would suddenly shake off her hand vigorously, causing her to lose balance and fall? Jake's face was gloomy as he said coldly, Diana, after marrying my Big Bro, you start to look down on others. Do you really think your arranged marriage is so stable? Big Bro can solve your family's problems, and I can also make your family have problems again. I gave a wry smile and didn't want to get tangled with him anymore, so I turned and left. Who would have thought Jake had gone crazy and actually grabbed my hand? I won't let you like anyone else. As I struggled, a cold shout came from the doorway. Let her go. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 5. Asterisk, asterisk. If you lay a finger on your sister-in-law again, move out of the old house on your own initiative. Ethan's tone was icy. Jake involuntarily let go of my hand. Among the Morgans, apart from the commanding Morgan patriarch, the one they feared most was Ethan. He had exceptional medical talent and was very hardworking, long known as a miracle doctor. Every day, countless people sought connections to ask him to treat their illnesses, which greatly expanded the Morgan family's network. So no one dared to provoke him. And Jake, not being proficient in medicine, naturally didn't either. Only after marrying Ethan did I understand why Jake had such a great reputation. It was because Jake lived in the old house. To others, he and his genius Big Bro got along well. If they couldn't get help from Ethan, they'd turn to Jake. Jake took advantage of his mom and Morgan's favoritism towards the younger son to ask Ethan, his big brother, to treat many intractable diseases of wealthy and famous people. Thus, the reputation that Ethan was unapproachable and Jake was gentle with people spread. Ethan held my wrist, looked at it, and said coldly, Jake, you're almost 30. Don't be like a weaned baby, always clinging to dad. Hone your medical skills well, and don't disgrace the Morgan family. Jake's face changed. This meant he was asked to move out of the old house and not take advantage of Ethan's reputation to accept patients anymore. Then he'd have no extra income and no connections either. I'll live in the old house as long as Dad agrees. Big Bro, just mind your own business and see more patients instead, so people won't say you look down on others because of your medical skills. I smiled and said, Little brother, the number of papers you've published and the times you've seen patients aren't even 1/3 of my husband's. What right do you have to question him? If you have the guts, don't accept patients yourself and let my husband handle them instead. Jake's face turned livid, and he gritted his teeth. Do you have a say in this? How dare you talk to your sister-in-law? Are you ignoring my warning just now? Ethan said unhappily. I'll talk to Dad tonight. You should be independent too. After saying that, he pulled me upstairs. He personally washed my wrist and applied medicine to it. He stared for a long while and then said in a muffled voice, "The patients I treated during my 1-year business trip were all found by my little brother. Their conditions were very rare, so I couldn't help but go. Don't worry, I'll never be on a business trip for that long again, and I won't let family members bully you either." I couldn't help but laugh. The person who seemed aloof to others was actually a bit of a closet flirt. "Okay, I'll see how you perform next." Ethan curled the corners of his mouth and hugged me tightly, kissing me passionately. Later, Morgan really asked Jake to move out. No one knew who leaked what happened at the banquet that day. Everyone in the circle knew the two Morgan brothers weren't that close, and Jake had secretly used Ethan's reputation to collect money from patients for himself. Jake lost most of his connections. Asterisk. Asterisk Chapter 6. Asterisk, asterisk. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. After being affectionate with Ethan for half a month, we both returned to our work routines. Suddenly, Lily came to my door crying. "Amelia, do you like Jake? But you're already married. Why did you ruin his reputation just because he didn't choose you for an arranged marriage? How could you be so unreasonable?" I looked at her strangely and said, "Why have you become such a lovesick fool? Has that jerk Jake brainwashed you?" In my past life, Lily was just busy taking care of the kids. I didn't see her being so desperate for the distant Ethan. "I think you're just jealous that Jake truly likes me. Amelia, stop making petty moves." Lily said with pity, "I know you can't have kids, so you're unbalanced." I sneered. "Then you're quite something. You can have kids. I don't care who Jake likes. I love Ethan. Don't get involved with me. Since you think your husband is perfect, just live your life well." I looked at her plump figure and said meaningfully, "Don't take random medicines if there's nothing wrong with your body. Be careful not to mess up your health." Lily's face changed several times. Seeing that she couldn't out-argue me, she stomped her foot and turned to leave. A pair of big hands wrapped around my waist from behind, and warm breath sprayed on my ear. "So the person my wife loves is me," Ethan said with a smile, pressing his whole body against my back. I struggled a bit. Seeing he didn't move, I felt my head getting hot. "You're so heavy. Get off me quickly." Ethan hugged my waist and sat up, holding me in his arms. "My little brother has been spoiled by Dad and Mom. I gave him a little lesson a few days ago." He paused and continued. "Is there something wrong with your body? You look fine to me. Why did Lily say you can't have kids?" My heart tightened. "If I can't have kids, then you don't have to endure the pain of giving birth." Ethan interrupted me. "I've taken your pulse and didn't find any problems with your body. But whether you can have kids or not, if you're sick, you should see a doctor." I understood what he meant. He was simply concerned about my health. My heart ached and I couldn't help but bury my head in his arms. After that day, seeing that I was interested in medicine, Ethan took me to read many medical books together. He also discussed a lot of Western medical surgical techniques with me. The two of us focused our energy on medicine and work. My reputation as a medical master grew bigger and bigger, and people came to me every month because of my fame. I don't know if it was on purpose that Jake found rare patients for Ethan for a whole year, but Ethan's medical skills broke through earlier than in his previous life. His medical skills and knowledge became even more excellent, and he was actually on par with veteran doctors who had been practicing for decades. Morgan praised Ethan both implicitly and explicitly and wanted to hand over the company's business to him. Jake got worried and made Lily drink countless folk remedies, hoping to have a medical genius son as soon as possible. My best friend was tortured miserably, but she insisted that Jake loved her and that she must have a son for him. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 7, asterisk, asterisk. 5 years had passed. Both Ethan and I had improved our medical skills, and our relationship was as sweet as honey. We would argue heatedly over medical differences, but he would surprise me from time to time in private. At work, we're both rivals and friends, but in life, I'm just your lover. He gave me enough respect and freedom at work, and also made me a happy wife in the eyes of others. Perhaps my previous life was too painful, so fate gave me a chance to start over. I decided to discuss with him about having a child. Ethan actively cooperated with the examinations and body conditioning. In my past life, when I didn't get pregnant for so long, Jake and his mother pressured me. He thought that since he was from a medical family, there couldn't be any problems with my body. If I couldn't conceive, it must be because of me. I insisted on going for examinations with him. The results showed there was indeed a problem with my body, while his was normal. He accompanied me to several clinics, and the results were the same. I was physically and mentally exhausted and felt guilty towards him, so I obediently followed his advice to condition my body. I had acupuncture and took medicine for 10 years. But when I was kicked out of the house by Jake with nothing but my daughter, I accidentally discovered his real examination results. It turned out that he had a major problem. There was a defect in his genes, and his sperm could hardly survive. Even if I got pregnant by chance, the child born would not be healthy. I had been deceived by him for 10 years like this. Obviously, my body had been conditioned long ago. Just wait and see. Do you think that just because Lily has a good pregnancy constitution, she can have a healthy child? I sneered. Don't be disappointed in the end. When Ethan and I were preparing for pregnancy, Lily's body became more and more out of shape. When she saw the diagnosis sheet in my hand, a happy smile appeared on her tired face. I knew you still cared about whether you could conceive. You must have had a lot of acupuncture and taken a lot of medicine over the years, right? I suggest if you can't have kids, let your brother have a child with someone else. Then you won't suffer and can still happily hold a baby. I looked her up and down. When she first got married, Jake was extremely good to her, and she was dressed in luxury from head to toe. Now she was wearing cheap clothes, and her bag was from a few years ago. Seemingly noticing my gaze, Lily stammered, "What are you looking at?" My Jake said, "Wearing cheap clothes is good for the body, not too irritating." I smiled and said, "As long as you like it." Lily, if you can't have kids, you can also be magnanimous and get a divorce so your little brother can have a child with someone else. After saying that, I turned and left. Lily behind me was so angry that she jumped up and down, but not long after that, Lily really got pregnant. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 8. Asterisk, asterisk. Jake was over the moon and took Lily out shopping again. He even boasted that he'd give Lily a villa as long as she gave birth to a son. Morgan and Jake's mom also showed their kindness. They transferred a sum of money to Lily and told everyone they were going to have a grandson. Lily's gloominess from the past 5 years was swept away, and she was in high spirits. She deliberately waited for me to get off work to tell me the news. "Amelia, our Morgan family doesn't lack the little money you earned from working. I advise you to quit your job and have a son for my brother. Otherwise, just like Jake said, maybe one day he'll divorce you." Lily, still not showing a pregnancy belly, was walking on air. I smiled and said, "If you give birth to a child that doesn't meet Jake's expectations, he'll really divorce you." Over the past few years, Lily has seen what Jake is really like. She panicked and said harshly, "You're just jealous of me. Even if I give birth to a daughter this time, I'll surely have a son next time. Unlike you, who don't even have any hope of having your own child. How do you know I don't?" "You believe everything Jake says. Don't be cheated by others and still count the money for them?" I sneered. Perhaps once people's own interests are involved, there will be estrangement. Even if Lily and I used to be on good terms, with the conflicts of interests in our respective married lives, we couldn't be as good as before. Jake rushed over hurriedly and gently cared about Lily's body. He seemed to have become the obedient lover to his wife as he was during their newlywed days. Lily buried herself in his arms angrily and cried, saying that I was jealous of her. Jake glared at me angrily. "Amelia, even if you're dissatisfied with me, don't you dare hurt Lily." Over the past few years, he had noticed my changes and seemed certain that I was also reborn. I remained calm on the surface. "I don't care what happens to you. Please don't come to bother me again." Ethan came to pick me up from work and walked over from a distance. Seeing the tense atmosphere, he was the first to hug me and looked coldly at Lily. "Don't always come to annoy your sister-in-law." Lily shrank her neck and didn't dare to speak. Jake's face darkened. "Bro, are you going to protect Diana without even asking the reason? She's my wife. Who else should I protect if not her? Even if your sister-in-law is wrong, if you come to bother her again, you too can forget about working in City B." Ethan looked as if it was only natural. Now that Morgan had almost handed all his power to Ethan, he indeed had the right to transfer Jake from the clinic in City B to another city. Jake swallowed his anger and left. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 9. Asterisk, asterisk. It was calm for more than half a year. Lily's belly grew bigger and bigger, and the baby of my current life also arrived quietly. This time, he came into the world with the love of his parents, not as a tool for power and profit. After knowing about it, Lily called to congratulate me. Amelia, you said you didn't care, but actually you've been working hard too. You've been through a lot these years, but Jake told me that you might not be able to really get your body conditioned well. Even if you get pregnant and give birth, the child will probably be abnormal. On the phone, her voice was full of sympathy. Jake seemed to be beside her too, and said sarcastically, "No matter what the sister-in-law gives birth to, my brother will love it very much." I think it's Jake who is mentally unstable. Since he's reborn, doesn't he know whose fault it is that an unhealthy child is born? Soon it was the day of Lily's delivery. Jake had arranged his own ward early and asked the best obstetrician in the clinic to deliver Lily's baby. Morgan made a special trip to the clinic, followed by numerous relatives from the Morgan family. Everyone was looking forward to Morgan's grandchild. Morgan was beaming from ear to ear and slapped Jake on the shoulder vigorously. "Well done! Finally, I can hold my grandson." Jake was ecstatic. His hands were trembling as he wanted to take the baby, but he tried his best to restrain his joy and asked, "Is the child healthy? Have all the examinations been done?" The obstetrician came out and asked the nurse to take the child for an examination. Jake's face froze when he heard that, and his expression looked a bit unnatural. Morgan, however, urged them to finish the examination quickly so he could hold his grandson. Unexpectedly, after the examination, the doctor delivered a shocker. The child has slow reactions and abnormal cerebellar development, meaning the child might be mentally retarded. The joy came to an abrupt end. Morgan's smile froze on his face and slowly disappeared. Jake was stunned and muttered to himself, "Why? I clearly chose a different person. No way!" He roared, his face contorted. How could it be abnormal? Was it because Lily didn't adjust her body well, or didn't protect the child so the child was born like this? Unfortunately, the doctor shattered his illusion. "There is a defect in the child's genes. You're lying! It's because Lily didn't protect the child." Jake yelled hysterically, "How could such a mentally retarded person be my child? Throw him out and send him to the orphanage." Lily, dragging her weak postpartum body, ran out. "Jake, you're crazy. He's your son." He stood in front of her son, spreading her arms to prevent Jake from taking him away. "I took so many medicines and had so many injections to give birth to him. It was you who always wanted a son. But now that he's been born, you look down on him for being slow in reactions and are going to abandon him. Jake, you brute." Sophie was in tears, with her eyes full of hatred. I lowered my eyes, my heart full of mixed feelings. In my previous life, I gave birth to a daughter. Jake didn't even look at her, so I didn't notice that my daughter was abnormal. It was when my daughter was 1 year old that I found out, and he also yelled to send my daughter away, saying he couldn't afford to lose face. Finally, Morgan stopped his youngest son's absurd behavior. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 10. Asterisk, asterisk. Jake was a mess for several months. He didn't dare to show up at family banquets. He also didn't go to see his son, claiming he didn't have such a mentally retarded son. When Lily was out of confinement and still breastfeeding the child, he was already thinking about getting Lily pregnant again. He forced Lily to take injections and medicines again, saying that if she gave birth this time, she'd surely have a healthy son next time. Morgan scolded him several times, but he still went his own way. Lily seemed willing to cooperate with him. Soon I gave birth to a healthy daughter. The moment the doctor said she was healthy, I burst into tears instantly. Ethan wiped my tears away lovingly and held the child to comfort me. "Diana, you've worked hard. I'll be a good father." He was learning how to hold the baby with great care, bringing his work from the clinic to the hospital ward. In recent years, he had been focusing on the company. Sometimes he would also see patients with difficult-to-treat diseases. Now he was concentrating on taking care of my body. Giving birth takes a great toll on the mother's body. Having a daughter is enough for us. He said this to me in a consultative tone. I felt warmth in my heart. I heard that when he was waiting outside the delivery room, his whole body went weak and he could hardly walk. Thinking about it, he must have been devoting his energy to our daughter these years. I smiled and replied, "Okay. Ethan, why are you so nice to me?" I feel our marriage doesn't seem arranged, but more like one out of love. Ethan's ears turned red, and he coughed uncomfortably. I've been noticing you for a long time. Medicine is a unified field. I think you're really good at Western medicine. I secretly chuckled to myself. So he had a crush on me. Ethan and I became doting parents to our daughter, immersing ourselves in raising a child. Unexpectedly, news about Lily came. Less than 5 months after Lily's confinement period ended, she got pregnant again. Despite all the precautions, she still had a miscarriage accidentally. Jake cursed at her for being useless and told her to quickly take care of her body and make sure to give birth to a medical genius son, not caring about her physical condition at all. To make her focus on preparing for pregnancy, without distractions, he secretly sent their mentally disabled son to an orphanage. Lily was furious. She had a huge fight with him at the clinic, yelling at him in front of the medical staff and the families of patients that he was the one with problems. Jake, it's clearly you who are no good. You can't give birth to a healthy son, but you put all the blame on me. You coward. You faked the medical records to deceive me into thinking I was the one with problems while you were normal. It's clear there are defects in your genes, making it hard for women to get pregnant by you. Even if they do, the child will be mentally disabled. I've had enough of you, you lunatic. Divorce? The news spread like wildfire and became a hot topic on the internet. Morgan cursed angrily and hurriedly tried to clean up his son's mess. Then he made a decision for Lily, gave her compensation, and let her leave with her son after the divorce. Jake was disgraced. When he wanted to arrange another marriage, no one paid any attention to him. He found a girlfriend on his own and got married, but almost killed her and was sued in court. Morgan was physically and mentally exhausted. Jake's mother seemed to have aged 10 years instantly. Usually she took great care of herself and always had the air of a noble lady. She was clearly a dozen years younger than Morgan, but now she looked even older than him. In the end, Jake didn't go to prison. He was judged to be a mental patient and was sent to a mental hospital. He kept mumbling, "I'm reborn. I must be able to give birth to a genius son." Walking out of the court, Lily was standing outside with her son in her arms. Her eyes were complex, but she walked up to me and said softly, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have competed with you." I smiled and walked past her. The friendship between Lily and me had already disappeared completely in our previous life. In this life, how could I care about what happens to you? To me, you're already a stranger. Many years later, our daughter grew up slowly. Both her teachers and our relatives praised her as a medical genius. As a mother, I knew very well that our daughter was indeed smart. But without the patient guidance of her parents, she wouldn't have learned so quickly. As the only granddaughter of the Morgan family, she was also adored and grew up in the spotlight.